We live in a very unusual age now. There have always been differences in societies, differences in communities, whether they're families or towns or countries.
And in such times, I think it's very, very important for us to speak out in favor of humanity. The number one issue facing humanity today is a very simple one. How do we live together?
Quel que soit le continent, quelle que soit la situation, on est plongé dans des contextes qui nous remettent en cause nous-mêmes et qui illustrent à quel point il est important de favoriser tous ces dialogues, toutes ces rencontres, de faire fi de nos a priori, des stéréotypes, pour bâtir une société plus harmonieuse et qui peut exister.
The Global Pluralism Award helps us highlight extraordinary work that's going on around the world, simply to answer that question. The nominations are fascinating because they're global and they're also incredibly broad. We live in a world where it almost feels like it's coming apart at the seams, where voices of intolerance and hatred are growing louder and louder, where the forces that would tear us apart are seeming to prevail over those that would bring us together.
A sense of pluralism causes us to understand and hopefully respect the identities of others. Working with people who aren't us, we become more than what we were. It's an enlarging creative process for us.
Ce qui m'a frappé dans certains des projets, c'est la prise de risque, le courage de certains ou de certaines qui sont déterminés à aller jusqu'au bout pour que la dignité humaine l'emporte sur le reste.
It was also for me shining the light on the darkest corners of many things that are happening in societies.
Donc le pluralisme, c'est une force, c'est une opportunité pour mieux comprendre, pour mieux vivre ensemble dans une société et de respecter les conditions de la paix.
It should not just be for like-minded people to come together and to say how diverse we are, but really to bring groups together that do not want to sometimes face the real issues.
I am pleased to welcome the recipients of the 2017 Global Pluralism Award to the stage. Je suis heureux d'accueillir les lauréats et les lauréates du Prix mondial de pluralisme 2017 sur la scène. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for His Highness the Aga Khan, Chair of the Board of the Global Centre for Pluralism, and the Right Honourable Beverley McLaughlin, Chief Justice of Canada. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, veuillez vous lever pour accueillir Son Altesse l'Aga Khan, Président du Conseil du Centre mondial de pluralisme, et le très honorable Beverley McLaughlin, Juge en chef du Canada.
Your Highness, Madam Chief Justice, Excellencies, and friends, I wish you all a very warm welcome on behalf of His Highness the Aga Khan and the Board of Directors of the Global Centre for Pluralism to this inaugural Global Pluralism Award ceremony. I'm John McNee, and it's my great honor to serve as Secretary General of the Centre. Nous sommes réunis ici ce soir sur le territoire traditionnel du peuple algonquin. Pendant des siècles, ce territoire a été un lieu de rassemblement. C'est ici que les Algonquins et d'autres membres des Premières Nations rencontraient et commerçaient avec les Français et les Britanniques. Plus récemment, cette région a accueilli diverses communautés du monde entier en tant qu'immigrants et réfugiés. Il convient donc de célébrer les lauréats du Prix mondial du pluralisme ici, en ce lieu de rassemblement. Ce groupe diversifié et très talentueux a voyagé de partout dans le monde pour se joindre à nous. The passion and commitment of the 10 awardees on stage with us this evening are inspiring. They are all compelling examples of pluralism in action. Pluralism means recognizing, valuing, and respecting our differences. The award finalists are tackling problems of exclusion by trying to change negative mindsets and narratives that often accompany diversity. Their work treats differences as assets rather than liabilities. The award is being launched in a very significant year for both of the Centre's co-founders, His Highness and Canada. This year, Canadians have marked 150 years since Confederation, an important milestone that has generated reflection about the country's history, its relationship to Indigenous peoples, and its defining characteristics as a country. His Highness is also commemorating an important anniversary. His Diamond Jubilee began in July, marking 60 years as spiritual leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslims and 60 years of building institutions around the world dedicated to improving quality of life. Pluralism has been central to his vision and his endeavors. This award celebrates the work of an ever-widening network of exemplary change leaders around the world who are committed to championing pluralism. On that note, it is my great pleasure to welcome His Highness the Aga Khan to the podium.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Right Honourable Beverly McLaughlin, the Right Honourable Joe Clark, Excellencies, friends of the Global Centre for Pluralism. What a great pleasure it is to join all of you in this wonderful celebration. The extraordinary people we honor this evening have all demonstrated the same inspiring quality, the ability to respond creatively to the challenges of diversity. At the same time, however, what is also most impressive tonight is the sheer diversity of their own particular stories. As you may have noted, the 3 Pluralism awardees come from 3 continents, and our honorary awardees come from 7 additional countries. But more than that, the nature of their work is itself truly multidimensional, as you will see as you learn about their accomplishments in more detail. As you have heard, I am currently marking 60 years in the role I inherited in 1957. This role has taught me a great deal about the challenges of pluralism, about the way those challenges can be met, but also the way those challenges are growing. These are not new challenges. They are as old as the human race. They include the human temptation to define our personal identities by what we are against rather than what we are for. They include the temptation to view difference, whenever it may appear, as something that might complicate one's life rather than as something that can enrich one's life. And they include the sometimes instinctive reaction that difference is a threat to be avoided rather than an opportunity to be embraced. Some people make the mistake of thinking that pluralism requires them to dilute or de-emphasize their own distinctive identities. That's not true. What it requires is to ensure that one's individual identity is strong enough to engage confidently with those of other identities as we all walk together along the road to a better world. And as we walk together on that road, the example set by others can be a powerful source of inspiration. And that is why the Global Centre for Pluralism has established these awards. Their essential purpose is to share the power of inspiring examples with an ever wider community of pluralism all across our world, a community that will then create a growing momentum for inclusion rather than exclusion, as a way to respond to the changes of our world. In many ways, the establishment of this award follows the pattern of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, which was established several decades ago. The final outcome of the awards process is important, of course, but what is also important, both for architecture and now for pluralism, is the far-reaching process that leads to the selection of our awardees. It is a process that engages over a 2-year period scores, indeed hundreds, of dedicated individuals. It includes those who search for qualified nominees, those who explore and investigate and who then reflect on the difference that pluralistic commitments can make in specific contexts, at specific moments, in specific places. It is one thing for us to talk about the general principles and theories of pluralism, but it is even more exciting to see close up what pluralism can mean in practice. As I mention that process, I want to salute all who have participated in it, including the selection committee, our jury, led by former Canadian Prime Minister Joe Clark, and including His Worship, Nahid Nancy, Advocate Beans Gawanas, Dr. Dante Caputo, and Madame Pascale Dumurel. I'm also deeply pleased to be joined here tonight by the Right Honourable Beverley McLaughlin, Chief Justice of Canada. I well recall her groundbreaking 2015 pluralism lecture in Toronto, when she reminded us that living harmoniously amid diversity demands, and I quote her, great generosity of spirit and openness of mind. Those very qualities certainly characterize the Chief Justice herself. Her leadership of the Supreme Court will be greatly missed when she retires at the end of this year. It is my honor tonight to express to her our profound thanks for her powerful example, and I ask you to join me in welcoming her to this podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness, for those kind words. Your Highness, the Aga Khan, the Right Honourable Adrian Clarkson, the Right Honourable Joe Clark, Excellencies, and friends of the Global Centre for Pluralism. I want to thank you once again, Your Highness, for that kind introduction. I can only say it is a great privilege to join you here tonight in my last month as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada to help or be a small part of the presentation of the Global Pluralism Awards to these truly impressive recipients. C'est un privilège pour moi de me joindre à vous ce soir au cours de mon dernier mois d'activité en tant que juge en chef de la Cour suprême du Canada, afin de participer à la remise du prix mondial de pluralisme à ce groupe de lauréats des plus impressionnants. It really is very humbling to stand here tonight at this awards ceremony in the presence of His Highness and in the presence of these wonderful people who have dedicated their lives to making this world a better place. His Highness believes that diversity should inspire us, not divide us. And he has lived that principle throughout his 60 years of spiritual leadership. Last month, he was recognized by the United Nations Foundation as a champion for global change. His call for a global commitment to fight poverty and to bring public, private, and civil society actors together is helping to improve the lives of millions in the developing world. Turning to our finalists, I have had the privilege of reading their biographies, and I can tell you that all 10 exemplify the principles His Highness has devoted his life to. They, like him, are an inspiration to all of us. As His Highness said earlier, each of them is contributing in a meaningful and lasting way to build inclusive, peaceful societies that truly value diversity. We need only turn on the news to see how critically important their work and the leadership they exemplify are in today's world. It is fitting that the Global Pluralism Award is being inaugurated in Canada, a country that values and promotes diversity. Il convient très bien que l'inauguration du Prix mondial du pluralisme ait lieu au Canada, pays qui attache une grande valeur à la diversité et favorise l'épanouissement. In Canada, we see ourselves and we are seen by others as multicultural, pluralistic, and tolerant. We have opened our doors to people and communities of different faiths and backgrounds, and we have been enriched by their presence. But as I remarked in my pluralism lecture in 2015, while we celebrate our progress in history, we must not forget its blemishes. And importantly, in this age, its failures over many decades in its relationship with the Indigenous peoples of this land. Our history has taught us that intolerance is not only harmful, but it holds us back. We have made progress in all areas of endeavor by embracing tolerance and inclusivity, by celebrating our differences. We have done so by building strong civil society institutions, fostering inclusive cultural attitudes, and we continue to build a better future through creative thinking and through galvanizing others in this support. It requires hard work and it requires deep commitment. All of our Global Pluralism Award winners understand intimately how important the values of pluralism and diversity are. They have each had to make very personal sacrifices, and yet they continue to fight for what they believe in. We need global champions of pluralism like them to work for a more inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous world for all of us. This award ceremony is a brilliant idea. It's a way of celebrating those who do not take the time to celebrate themselves, those who have given their lives to helping others make the most of their lives. So thank you for allowing me to be a small part of this ceremony. Merci beaucoup.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to the 7 honorable mention recipients of the Global Pluralism Award. His Highness the Aga Khan and the Right Honorable Beverly McLaughlin will present their certificates. J'ai le plaisir de vous présenter les 7 mentions d'honneur du Prix mondial de pluralisme. Son Altesse l'Aga Khan et la très honorable Beverly McLaughlin leur remettront leur certificat. An honorable mention goes to ATD Carmonde of France for empowering marginalized Roma, migrant, and refugee communities in the suburbs of France. Accepted by Frédéric Pasturel. Une mention d'honneur est remise à ATD Carmonde de la France pour sa contribution à l'autonomisation des Roms, des migrants et des communautés de réfugiés marginalisés dans les banlieues de la France. Be Another Lab of Spain for using state-of-the-art technology such as virtual reality to foster empathy and mutual understanding. Accepted by Dahnish Massoud. Be Another Lab de l'Espagne pour son utilisation de la technologie de pointe comme la réalité virtuelle pour favoriser l'empathie et la compréhension mutuelle. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par Dahnish Massoud. Fundación Construir of Bolivia for supporting a more inclusive vision of the law through dialogue between the judiciary and indigenous peoples. Accepted by Marco Mendoza. La Fundación Construir de la Bolivie pour sa contribution à une vision inclusive de la loi à travers le dialogue entre les systèmes judiciaires et les peuples autochtones. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par Marco Mendoza. Hand Talk of Brazil for increasing opportunities and independence for deaf individuals with a translation app, accepted by Tadeo Luz. Hand Talk du Brésil qui accroît les occasions offertes aux personnes malentendantes ainsi que leur indépendance grâce à une application de traduction. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par Tadeo Luz. Sahwa for Development and Aid of Lebanon for providing humanitarian assistance to refugees and developing their independence, accepted by Ruba Mahassen. Sahwa for Development and Aid du Liban pour son aide humanitaire aux réfugiés et le développement de leur indépendance. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par Ruba Mahassen. Wapikoni Mobile of Canada for supporting reconciliation by traveling to First Nations communities and teaching filmmaking to youth, accepted by Bailey Watson. Wapikoni Mobile du Canada qui soutient la réconciliation en se déplaçant dans les communautés des Premières Nations pour enseigner aux jeunes la réalisation cinématographique. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par Bailey Watson. Welcoming America of the United States for helping to build inclusive local communities for immigrants and refugees, accepted by David Lubell. Welcoming America des États-Unis pour sa contribution à la création de communautés locales inclusives pour les immigrants et les réfugiés. La mention d'honneur est acceptée par David Lubell. Félicitations à toutes les mentions d'honneur. I am now pleased to announce the winners of the 2017 Global Pluralism Award. Leiner Palacios of Colombia, Alice Deritu of Kenya, and Daniel Webb of Australia. Their work will be presented in a series of 3 short films. J'ai maintenant le plaisir de vous présenter les lauréats et la lauréate du Prix mondial de pluralisme 2017. Leiner Palacios de la Colombie, Alice Deritu du Kenya, et Daniel Webb de l'Australie.
What happened in Bohia is one of the worst atrocities of the 52 years of civil conflict. And the fact that someone like Leonard Palacios has the courage to come forward and represent his committee on the legal rights of the victims of this atrocity is a testimony to his civic-mindedness and his belief in human rights and justice.
Bueno, en mi pueblo, en Bojayá, en el 97 hubo una avanzada del paramilitarismo y hubo un recrudecimiento del conflicto armado. La gente vivíamos de una aparente tranquilidad y con esa llegada del paramilitarismo lo que se vio fue como una distorsión de esa tranquilidad. La FARC hacía presencia en esos territorios y la vida de las comunidades se transformó. Yo vi morir a mis paisanos. Desde ese momento los paramilitares empezaron a picar, a matar y a picar gente y a echarlo en costales y tirarlo agua abajo. En el 2002 vino ese otro golpe grande que sufrimos todo el pueblo boyacense. La FARC vino en una confrontación armada con los paramilitares, tiraron la pipeta donde estábamos refugiados, una parte en la iglesia y otra en la casa de las Agustinas. En la iglesia más o menos habían unas 500, 600 personas y en la casa de las Agustinas por ahí 100, 150 personas. La pipeta cae y estalla preciso en donde estaba el mayor número de la población y pues eso fue un momento muy duro porque en mi caso nosotros somos de una familia Palacios y perdimos 28 familias entre primos y sobrinos. Yo siempre digo, cuando uno conoce los detalles del conflicto armado, ahí es donde uno se hace consciente de la importancia de ser líder y sobre todo defender los derechos de las víctimas.
Lo que más me motiva de él es la integridad de su trabajo, y en ese sentido lo que he percibido de su liderazgo es unas muy buenas dotes y habilidades diplomáticas, de conciliar, de buscar soluciones, de tener además una capacidad de incluir a los excluidos.
Cuando uno ve que la comunidad está tan expuesta, tan sola, pues tenemos que hacer algo los líderes y tenemos que sacar fuerza para al menos salvar el poquito de gente viva que nos queda.
The peace process in Colombia defines a very historic moment in the history of this country. The opportunity for peace and reconciliation is very real at this point in time.
Yo participé en la primera delegación de víctimas que fue a La Habana. Y en ese momento, después de la conferencia que tuve, la ponencia, varios miembros de la FARC, la delegación estaba compuesta por 8 plenipotenciarios, por 10, y alrededor de 8 se acercaron y me dijeron que querían tener un encuentro con la comunidad de Bojayá, porque ellos querían pedirle perdón a Bojayá. La comunidad nos dijo que sí quería escuchar la petición de perdón, pero siempre y cuando se transformaran cosas. Y ahí es donde nace entonces el criterio de defensa de derechos humanos del comité. Entonces nos dice, ya no queremos que ustedes trabajen únicamente petición de perdón, queremos que trabajen derecho a la verdad, o sea, organización del lugar de memoria, queremos que trabajen el tema de reparación individual y colectiva, ¿cierto? Queremos que trabajen el tema de identificación de los cuerpos.
El comité es un espejo para muchos otros movimientos de víctimas. Hay mucha expectativa por otros grupos que todavía no se atreven, que todavía ven que hay muchos obstáculos en el camino, que lo ven muy difícil. La mirada diversa de los pueblos debe ser objeto de reconocimiento. Objeto de reconocimiento por los constructores de las políticas públicas. Los pueblos étnicos tienen todavía mucho que aportar a una construcción nacional y a una construcción de humanidad mucho más compleja y diversa de la que muchos nos quieren hacer creer.
The fact that Lehner is being considered for this award, I think will send a very powerful signal to Colombian society about the power of pluralism and the impact that it can have on the future of the peace accords.
Y yo creo que el premio es un motivador para que la gente se llene nuevamente de confianza, primero pues en que sí es posible, sobre todo en el campo de la reconciliación, pues también se empieza a valorar más las luchas de las víctimas.
Ese es el llamado de que no se retiren, no nos dejen solos. Por ahí hubo una vez que se escuchó que como ya estábamos en un proceso de paz, ya la comunidad internacional tenía que ir, el sistema de Naciones Unidas, chao, chao. Y así no es. Ahora es que más necesitamos. Porque nosotros estamos asustados también con el tema del postconflicto.
El mensaje que queremos es que ese tipo de violencia no se pueden repetir en nosotros, en esta región, pero tampoco en ninguna otra parte de Colombia y, por qué no decir, del mundo.
Lehner Palacios Asprilla will now be presented with the Global Pluralism Award by His Highness the Aga Khan and the Right Honourable Beverly McLaughlin. Son Altesse l'Aga Khan et la très honorable Beverly McLaughlin remettront maintenant le prix mondial de pluralisme à Lehner Palacios Asprilla.
Un saludo cordial y caluroso lleno del Chocó a cada uno de ustedes. Yo vengo desde la más profunda Colombia, desde una región pacífica, marginada llena de biodiversidad y de recursos naturales, y también llena de diversidad humana y cultural. Soy de Bojayá, Chocó, un municipio donde el conflicto armado y las necesidades básicas insatisfechas nos carcomen y acaban con nuestras vidas. Hemos sufrido verdaderas tragedias evidenciadas en el sufrimiento, en la pérdida de vidas humanas, en especial en el enfrentamiento armado entre la FARC y los paramilitares. Perdimos 79 miembros de nuestra comunidad, todos civiles. 13 años después, fundamos el Comité por los Derechos de las Víctimas, desde donde venimos trabajando la identificación plena de nuestros fallecidos. En comité realizamos una extensa labor de pedagogía sobre el acuerdo de paz y nuestro pueblo votó en el 97% en favor de la salida negociada del conflicto armado en Colombia. Realizamos un acto en donde la FARC fueron y reconocieron su parte en la victimización y pidieron perdón. Nosotros creemos en la reconciliación, nosotros creemos en la paz. Que nuestra labor sea valorada y reconocida por la comunidad internacional nos llena de esperanza. Este reconocimiento del Centro Mundial por el Pluralismo es también un compromiso a continuar con la labor de defensa e inclusión de los derechos de los demás. Nuestra comunidad están felices y, por supuesto, yo también. Ustedes han llevado la alegría a 32 comunidades indígenas y a 19 comunidades afro, todas de Bojayá, y que tanto necesitan esa alegría. Esperamos que este premio sea un nuevo punto de partida para que el gobierno colombiano brinde mayores esfuerzos en la atención a los negros y los indígenas en Colombia. Reciban nuestra gratitud y sepan que trabajaremos por construir los pilares del pluralismo en Colombia siempre con mayor entusiasmo. Thank you.
You know, Alice, she's taking on an issue that is at the heart of the development process in many parts of the world. It's not just Kenya.
It's a very lonely field for women mediators of armed conflict. It's lonely in the sense that peacemaking is not seen to be women's business.
So you then imagine where you have a woman rubbing shoulders with the best and greatest in Kenya in terms of the work that she does. You just know it never came easy. You know, she's had to overcome odds.
We had our elections in 2007. It was heavily contested. The losers did not accept defeat. The ethnic communities affiliated to the political parties took to the streets, and there was bad violence.
So nobody expected this degree of violence in Kenya. It was an all-out ethnic war. About 1,200 people were killed in violence across the country. More than 500,000 displaced. And what was so frightening about this was that they knew the perpetrators. The perpetrators were neighbors. The perpetrators were friends. And Kenyans woke up to the reality that you can't take peace and stability for granted.
Why should, people be killed, because of an election? We didn't see the reason why. And that is why we ourselves, decided that we should help, to restore peace.
For us, it became necessary to try a dialogue process. Alice's role was a mediator. She conceptualized the dialogue process. She was able to identify the community groups to bring on board. She was able also to bring them to a safe space where they could feel comfortable enough to make concessions, have a compromise. And she was able to help them also come up with an agreement which would help in ensuring that in the future they didn't have a similar scenario like we did in 2007.
People come with the ego. People come pretending they don't want to talk. People come pretending that, we are macho, we can still beat those guys, we can flatten them, who do they think they are? Or they want to talk to us, we don't want to talk to them. But after they present their position papers, you begin to chip away at the edges of their ego, and you begin to really getting that feeling that everyone is sick and tired of the violence.
Alice is, I think, a really consummate facilitator. Alice has a capacity to get people who are in extreme situations of conflict and mistrust to trust her and to take risks, to try and find new solutions, even when those are risky to themselves. The peace agreements that Alice facilitated in Nakuru, in Plateau, and Kaduna states in Nigeria are in themselves experiments in pluralism. They're affirmations that a pluralist agenda is what these communities want going forward, and they're committing themselves to pluralism through the agreements that Alice has drafted.
She has a drive to continue doing it irrespective of the challenges, largely because I think she believes in people, even when people don't believe in themselves. She wants to see a different kind of Africa, even when we are not convinced that we'll ever see a different kind of Africa.
Alice is a perennial optimist. So even in the midst of the most difficult challenges, that smile never leaves her face, and I'm sure you've noticed. And you know what it does is it gives hope, because sometimes problems look insurmountable.
A lot of the work that happens in these incredibly complicated and difficult sorts of processes is often invisible and doesn't get recognized for the extraordinary difficulties and risks that Alice has faced when she's taken controversial decisions to, as I said, reach out to people who are against a pluralist agenda and convince them that they need to come in.
The one thing she never forgets is bringing the inclusion agenda to the table. The Nakuru peace process, where she was an only woman, and seeing how she struggled even bringing women to the table, it's something that she wants to see change.
And it sets an example also for young women simply to be leaders, which I think is also a really important message, not just for the younger generation, but for men to understand that women can be at the forefront of helping to solve these problems.
I always tell people, you know something? It's okay. It's okay to be who you are. When you come to this table, don't apologize for your religion. Don't apologize for your ethnic community. Don't apologize for what they've done or what they think of, for their stereotypes, for their biases, because all of us have biases and stereotypes. We grow up with them. It's what you do with them that then becomes the problem. We can never allow what divides us to build into biases and stereotypes that then translate into violence. I tell them, guess what? We are going nowhere. You can keep fighting and fighting. We are going to be here until one day you'll tell us, but why are you still here? We don't need you. We have peace now. And I told them, and that day will come, and I believe in it, and you must believe in it as well.
We need the Alices and Deritus of this world to help broker this new understanding that give young people a sense that I am included, that this space is for all of us, not for the old and the politically connected, that I can invest in my society and find fulfillment. That's the diversity, that's the inclusion, that's the social contract, a new understanding between the state and those it governs, as using the peaceful methods of conflict prevention, of amicable settlement, so that we can envision together a new society.
You know, for a long time, I knew that I got sustainable results in solving ethnic and religious conflicts because of accepting people's culture, not seeking to dilute their identities, ensuring inclusion, and building on commonalities to complement the beauty in their differences. I did not know what to call this approach. All I knew was that it worked. I now know it's called pluralism. I'm extremely optimistic that in a few years' time, references to women such as myself as the only woman mediating at the peace table, particularly as regards armed conflict, will become obsolete. In Kiswahili we say, penye nia pana njia. Where there is a will, there is a way. And there is a will and there is a way in pluralism. Of that I'm very sure. So this Global Pluralism Award has given me a mountaintop. Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm standing on top of the highest mountain in Africa right now. And from this mountaintop, I will shout out my optimism and create opportunities for both men and women. I will shout it out and do so to the best of my ability. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana, sana, sana.
It's so important that you are all here, because 4 years, 4 long, painful years. What an awful milestone. I mean, I think about all of the things that have happened in my life in 4 years. I think about all of the things that have happened in the world in 4 years. And then I think about the innocent men on Manus, the children and the families on Nauru. They have spent every minute of every hour of every one of those days trapped behind the same fence. And in that time, people have been shot at, people have been sexually assaulted. So we're here tonight to remember. We're here to remember the people who have needlessly died at our government's hands. And we are here to demand a future for those who are still left on Nauru and Manus.
Australia has some of the harshest refugee policies when it relates to people seeking asylum on our shores, particularly those who arrive by boat. A policy of deterrence, which means that people who have arrived in Australia by boat are used as examples and treated extremely harshly in order to dissuade others from taking the same journey.
We have a policy which has consigned 2,000 people to endless limbo in remote islands.
What our government does is holds them there for an indefinite period of time. And they do that with old people, they do that with people with disabilities, they do that with babies, they do it with everybody. But the reality is that if you let xenophobia and fear triumph, and you start to say, well, we are allowed to do certain things to this group of people that we would not think of doing to our own people, then that's a really dark pathway.
It was only last year a UN delegation of mental health experts found that the highest levels of anxiety and depressive orders ever recorded in a group of people. And the sense of hopelessness continues, and it's only through the tireless, powerful advocacy of people like Daniel that these people have hope.
There was a number of people who had been brought to Australia for medical treatment, and as they were concluding their medical treatment, the Australian Border Force and Serco Immigration Services were forcibly putting people on planes and taking them back to the camps on Nauru and Manus. What happened at that moment is that Daniel and his team just didn't give up. So the Human Rights Law Centre went, okay, so we've been done on a legal technicality, but we're not going to stop there. And then they brought in Get Up, which is a national campaigning team, and put together the Let Them Stay campaign.
It is fundamentally wrong to condemn these people to a life in limbo on a tiny island.
Daniel called me because he said, I have 267 clients who are relying on this case protecting them from being sent back to certain abuse in Manus and Nauru in the offshore centres. And he said, I think the legal grounds could be exhausted and I want to run a campaign. And it got massive support. Every single state premier supported what was called Let Them Stay.
And before we knew it, we had swung public opinion in such a way that all of these people who we thought after the case would be immediately sent back offshore in a forcible and horrific way were suddenly being released into the community with their children.
And a year and a half later, we have more than 300 people who are still in Australia living in the community, not in Manus and Nauru, because of that campaign.
Daniel's work has really been important in advancing pluralism by getting across to the mainstream population that these people, they've suffered enormously. They share our dreams, they share our hopes. They crave the opportunity to contribute, to engage and to enrich our society.
This removing of the notion of difference and of the focus of, oh, this is a person seeking asylum. It was like, well, no, these are just people. And they should be protected just like anybody else.
The subject matter of his work is at the centre of global pluralism at this point in time in the global debate. The work he's doing is internationally significant and precedent-setting in terms of a defence to the forces that are encouraging us globally to withdraw from a plural society and withdraw from welcome and withdraw from rights obligations. And for many of these people, there's a sense to which the world has forgotten them. So this award for Daniel not only recognises his work, but I think acknowledges their plight. And I think it's immensely significant for them.
The best possible outcome is that the offshore processing system that we have in place now comes to an end, and that everybody who's been affected by that policy is settled in safety and are able to rebuild their lives.
At the heart of pluralism is valuing and respecting difference, recognising that all people, whoever they are and whatever they do and wherever they come from, deserve basic decency and respect. Because if every country in the world just adopted a single-minded focus on frightening people away, where would the world's refugees go?
I am incredibly grateful for this award, incredibly grateful. It may only be a few short seconds since I got my hands on it, but I feel like it's already opened some really important doors. It's opened doors to international media. It's opened doors to greater support for the work that we do and awareness of the injustice that we are fighting. And it's opened a door to Alice and to Lena and to a truly remarkable, extraordinary group of finalists. So I am honoured and I am grateful and I am proud to be standing here. But if I'm honest, I'm also deeply saddened. I'm deeply saddened by the injustice that this award acknowledges, and by the failures of courage and of moral leadership that have produced them. Right now around the world, I think we can see that fear and anxiety are on the rise, and so too, sadly, is the political willingness to exploit it. And it is in precisely these times, it is in precisely this sort of global climate that we must hold on to our moral compass the most tightly. These are the times when we must remember that all people, whoever they are and wherever they come from and whatever they believe, deserve to be treated with basic human decency and respect.
Chief Justice, you wonderful award winners, my colleagues in the jury, Mesdames, Excellencies, Mesdames, Messieurs. Years ago, in a quite other context, a Canadian context, when we were facing challenges similar in root to those challenges that have been met here, I quoted an elder from the Kootenay Plain in Alberta, who, when he was talking about the divisions that we faced, the differences we had, said to us, "Let us lift each other up." And what has happened tonight, and what has happened in the communities that have been affected by the individuals honored here, is that they have been lifted up. And they've been lifted up not by some supernatural force, but by the human instinct to respect diversity and to take a stand. These honorees tonight have done amazing things, but they have all, in their way, shown a courage that I find almost unimaginable. We try to ask ourselves, could I have done what they have done? But the answer is, and they would be the first to acknowledge it, that while they are being honored tonight, there are hundreds of thousands of individuals across the world who are saying we will not put up with this kind of indignity. We will recognize that there are human qualities in all of us, that those qualities have to be respected. Those differences have to be respected, not subsumed, not put down, not necessarily catered to, but respected as we try to build a more whole society. I'm a privileged person. I can't think of another privilege that has moved me more than the opportunity to serve as the chair of this jury, and to be exposed to the stories of these and others from across the world. 43 countries put forward nominations. And I was well served, was delighted to be joined by my colleague jurors. And we were all greatly appreciative of the service and the skill of the members of the Centre for Pluralism. So we are here. So we are celebrating these actions of the past. So we have heard the dedication of the honorees to go forward. And so we must now take this extraordinary initiative by His Highness and by the Centre to recognize this simple, natural, human virtue that is too often ignored and too often undervalued. We're privileged here, not simply by our condition, but by our ability to share the presence of people whose courage has been so remarkable, and by the sense of hope, of recognition that however dark events might seem, there are ways in which we can move forward. And the motors of those waves are ourselves. We are the people who can affect the kinds of changes that we would want to convey to our children and our grandchildren. Let me thank you again, Your Highness, for the honor of being able to serve in the jury. Let me say to my new friends, including Hugo, who translates Brazilian words into actions on an app and makes an enormous difference to people in Brazil who would otherwise be defined by deafness. We are privileged by this company and by this accomplishment and by this initiative to ensure that when actions of this kind are taken in the future, as they must be, they will be celebrated. Thank you.
This brings to a close the Global Pluralism Award ceremony. Thank you for being with us this evening, and we hope you will join us again at future events. Voilà qui conclut la cérémonie du Prix mondial de pluralisme. Merci d'avoir été avec nous ce soir. Nous espérons que vous serez des nôtres lors de prochains événements. Bonne soirée.